I need to know what's going on with the New York Knicks, and a man who covers the team for The Athletic is joining us here on the Rich Eisen Show, a maiden voyage here on the program. James Edwards III joining us here on the show. Good to see you, James. How are you?
I'm doing well, Rich. Really appreciate you having me on.
You got it, man. So, listen, I read your coverage, James, and I saw you in a double byline story after the Knicks season was over, essentially saying that Leon Rose of the Knicks front office was in favor of keeping Tom Thibodeau, and that it's essentially that plus Jaylen Brunson essentially basically saying what a silly question it is to even question his tenure here, as he dropped the mic in his final press conference of the season. Made me think he was safe, and he's not. What happened, James?
I think in the long haul, this organization, obviously, they don't want to just be satisfied with how far they got. And you can see how maybe the suits, those in higher powers, view this maybe season as a bit of fool's gold, right? The first round series against the Pistons, they beat the Pistons in 6, but the point differential in that series was 5 or 8 points, right? They didn't play great basketball. Credit to the Pistons, who are a good team, but the Knicks were down in the fourth quarter in those games, and the heroics of Jaylen Brunson, who's an incredible player, and Karl-Anthony Towns, who's an incredible player, helped them squeeze that out. Then you look, the Boston series, they're down 20 in the games 1 and 2. They make miraculous comebacks in both. They were down 14 plus in pretty much every game in that series except 1 or 2. And then you look at the Indiana Pacers. Once Boston's at home, Cleveland's at home, they put together this roster, that being the Knicks, that is full of this talent. And they struggled. Obviously, they lost, but they also struggled with the Indiana Pacers. So I think when you kind of scope out and you look, you could understand how maybe the powers that be maybe looked at this season, this playoff run, as a bit of fool's gold. Whether that's fair or unfair, I don't get paid big enough bucks to answer that, but it is certainly, I think, a reason for how we got here today.
Did something happen in exit interviews? Leon Rose apparently sitting in on these, that the players said stuff that, their body language was saying throughout the season, an argument, as we all saw, taking place on the bench at the end of the disastrous Game 1 regular, Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals in regulation, where they were arguing, seemingly barking at cat. Then we're seeing all these videos come out now in light of Thibodeau's firing, taking a look at things differently. Did anything happen in exit interviews based on your knowledge, James?
They did it in a unique way, and Ann Begley at SNY was the first to report this. James Dolan sat in on the exit interviews with the prominent figures, and I've been covering the NBA for 7 years. This was my 8th season. I have never really heard of an owner sitting in on exit meetings with players, and obviously they evaluate coaches and things like that, but it was very unique. It sounds like to me that there was a hope that there would be an admittance of some of the flaws that took place this year. That necessarily wasn't the case. And I think it's a situation where this organization they say they need a new voice. Tibbs has been there a long time. He's the best coach they've had in over a quarter century. To be fair to him, this roster got put together hours before the start of training camp, and they still got this far. I think one thing too, with all the talk about this team, obviously they had a successful season. And I think I know a lot of the issues that have arisen and been talked about, it was all basketball related stuff. It wasn't personal drama. It wasn't like you were going in the locker room and these guys were like, couldn't stand each other. It was all basketball related stuff. And I think that was probably the biggest issue throughout the course of the season. This team is very talented, but they struggled against the other top teams in the NBA during the regular season. They would put a great performance together. They would put a bad performance together. There was no consistency. They talked often about the lack of communication that they had on the floor. There was always kind of talks about we need to put our egos aside. We need to sacrifice. And it just felt like in terms of basketball, this team was not able to click. So whether or not that came across in those meetings, I'm sure it did. But those were common themes that you didn't have to be an insider to know that this team consistently talked about how they technically did not gel consistently enough with one another during this run that, again, landed them to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in 25 years.
Well, I got to be honest, though, James, when you hear egos need to be checked, that sounds personal. You know what I mean? That sounds like somebody's personality is grinding a gear here that might lead to lack of cohesion in a basketball sense. I think Josh Hart might have been the one to say that quote about egos need to be checked at the door. So, which is it? You know what I mean? Like, it's so confusing from the outside looking in here to figure out there has to be more to this iceberg. We just saw the tip.
No, certainly. And I think that's a great point. And I do think when we're talking about egos and sacrificing, it's basketball related. Of course, that stuff is rooted in personality. But I just think this group they couldn't find a way to gel. There were talks of people didn't know what their role was. It certainly was a unique situation. I think if you were in the locker room every single day, again, there wasn't like personal drama. It felt like it was a group that couldn't understand why it couldn't figure it out, why it couldn't be consistent, why it couldn't do things like why are we not communicating on defense? Why are we not playing fast consistently? Why are we not moving the ball? Like, it just felt like things that they couldn't figure out to get done. And in the end, with the help of the Indiana Pacers, it ended their season.
James Edwards, a third of The Athletic here on the Rich Eisen Show covering the Knicks. All right, I'm not done before turning the page yet because I'm reading so much stuff online. I don't know what's true and what's not. Is there an issue with Jaylen Brunson's dad, Rick, being an assistant on this team? Is there a problem in the locker room with this, James?
That has never been brought to my attention.
Okay.
That's never been. Now, would I be surprised if there was a player or two that had an issue with it? I mean, it's a unique situation, right? I have never been told that. Rick has, I know, obviously been with Tibbs for a long time, been with Leon Rose for a long time, brings value to the organization. Now, like I said, I haven't been told that specifically by any players, but if you told me that there were players that were struggled with it at times, like, you could understand why from a human personal standpoint.
Well, I'm going to put the Knicks fan hat on here. Whoever those players are, it's too bad. Honestly, like, there's one guy out of everybody else, certainly with this Giannis stuff that might be out there, James, that is untouchable. Untouchable. He is a Knick for life, and it is the son of Rick Brunson. Period. End of story. And so that's the thing. When I read that, I'm like, oh, man, you want to talk about how this thing can get ugly and spun out of control. It's that. You're talking about right. Jaylen's dad and his presence is an issue. I mean, I'm kind of glad to hear that this hasn't been brought to bear to somebody who's an insider.
This wasn't something that like came up in conversations with people. It's not something that was talked about off to the side or anything. And at least with me and a few others I know. Again, from a human standpoint, could you understand how somebody could have an issue with it? Of course, but Jaylen Brunson is the face of the Knicks. He's the best player the franchise had in quite some time. He's a tremendous leader. He's a perfect representative of an organization and its transformation from somewhat laughingstock to stability and respect. There's not a better face for that. And of course, we know how talented he is as a player. But that's how much revere and how much kind of power he has here. Like, and when I mean power, is like this is his show. This is his team. This team was built around his abilities and his development of a player.
Sir, you could remove the word somewhat from that statement.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, I know you have sensitivities about covering the team and being around players that you have access to. They were a laughing stock, and that's why, again, I'm somewhat surprised. So Thibodeau's firing means the team is completely sold on the roster that they currently have, and thus it's this guy who didn't have the right rotations, didn't have the right ingenuity, didn't have the right touch, didn't have the right communication skills, and thus he's the one that's got to go, despite the laughing stock no longer at all being the case for this franchise. James?
So that was my thing. Like, you can point to reasons why you could come to the conclusion why he was fired, right? Like this talented starting five, they had a negative net rating for the second half of the year. They struggled in the playoffs. If you want to say he should develop the bench, that's fair. But there was a lot of young rookies on that bench. It was a situation where this guy, I thought, maximized the situation. As I mentioned at the top of the show, this team got put together hours before training camp. Karl-Anthony Towns was traded the Friday before training camp. That is a big piece. And that's also comes with a lot of changes to how you operate, right? Like, he's not the defender Mitchell Robinson is or Isaiah Hartenstein was. Like, you have to build a whole new system around that. And I think for Tibbs, the big thing for me is he's a guy who has helped turn this culture around. He has helped provide stability. Given that this team was put together in a year, and not even a full year, and they still got to the Eastern Conference Finals, not everything needed to be perfect. But I thought just his track record alone would give him another season to try to rectify whatever it is that they felt was not correct this year. And that was my biggest thing. Again, you can point to certain things, basketball stuff, why they decide that they maybe need to get another coach in there. But I feel like out of respect for what he's done, give him another chance to try to smooth out whatever the basketball stuff is that they feel needs to be fixed.
James Edwards III here on the Rich Eisen Show, covering the Knicks. A few minutes left with you, James. So let's turn now. I'm ready to turn the page.
No, I'm good.
No.
All good.
No. I mean,
you want to talk about Michigan State?
Hold on a minute. The answer, I have it written down here. Hell no. Hell no. I mean, I love Izzo. I'm happy to talk football if you'd like, James. We can do that.
Although we can talk whatever you want.
Okay. So the Knicks are looking at who on the coaching front? Because you're hearing that who's the individual who's on the staff that they really like and they're concerned about being poached, and there's word that they're afraid they might lose him and he could be the next guy. Although I'm sure Knicks fans are looking at some big ass names at least. What's the search looking like, James? Walk me through it.
So I think you're referencing Johnny Bryant,
yes,
who was on the staff last year and left this past season for Cleveland. He was just up. He was a finalist for the Phoenix job. Listen, there are assistant coaches in this league who I know do a lot and would be able to somewhat vouch for their opportunity to be a head coach. I think a lot of fans get enamored with what they don't know, right? Like, we always want to see the rookie. We want to see the guy who hasn't played. Like, let's see what he looks like. It's the same thing with assistant coaches. I know a little bit, and other reporters do, because we're around the assistant coaches. We know how much they do, but your general NBA or sports fan doesn't really know how much the other assistant coach does, right? So that is a name that is a potential candidate. He has been in the system. He is a guy that was brought in by World Wide Wes a few years ago. So that's definitely possible. Now, people have mentioned Mike Malone. I don't see that happening.
Why?
To me, that's like firing Tibbs and hiring Tibbs. Very similar how they go about their business. Both great coaches. I'm not saying that as a knock by any means, but kind of from the same tree. One of Tibbs's mentors was Brendan Malone. That's Michael Malone's father. Both are very much like have a plan and stick to their plan. Both play their starters a lot. If that is an issue for the front office, like Mike Malone has shown to do that too. It feels like when you do these coaching searches, if you go from like the old school coach, the next coach is the young, imaginative coach. When you move on from that coach, you go back to the old school coach. So I just don't see that happening. Taylor Jenkins is the name to watch. Obviously, he had success in Memphis, but you also you want to learn, why did they kind of run him out of town? He's another CAA guy. Obviously, there's people that know the Knicks' CAA ties run strong. James Borrego's a name to watch. I think Sean Sweeney in Dallas, who has been with Jason Kidd at every stop, and a guy I covered in Detroit that is well respected and very good and close friends with Giannis Antetokounmpo and helped him become the player that he is. Mike Nori in Minnesota, who's another guy that – go ahead, I'm sorry.
What about Jay Wright? What about him? What about going big, massive?
Yeah.
What do you got for me, James?
So this is my thing with Jay Wright. I'm not going to say it's not possible. It sounds like to me, from all the stuff, whenever you hear Jay Wright talk about coaching, he's fine where he's at. But even more than that, if you're – maybe they do. This is just me talking. If you're Jalen, Josh, and Mikal, do do you want your college coach as your NBA coach? Like it's like you're out on your own now. Like maybe I could see that being a little weird. The other thing is, if there's talks about the clickiness throughout the organization, there's nothing more clicky than the Villanova guys getting their Villanova coach, right? Like I think obviously maybe there would be roster moves to come, but I don't think like for a situation if there were in fact players uneasy with Jaylen's dad being around, like will they be any less uneasy with the Villanova guys coach being around? Like that's something you have to consider. So Jay Wright is a phenomenal coach. I think he deserves an opportunity if he wants one, but I think there are other things to consider with that too.
Dan Hurley?
I don't see it. Again, I think one of the best offensive minds in the sport. I don't know about the personality. He's a bit outspoken. The Knicks as an organization don't necessarily like the most outspoken of people when they're behind microphones. I just think that one would be kind of hard to rein in.
So basically, you fire Tibbs to either bring in another Tibbs, or you bring in who's Michael Malone, or you bring in some other people who might be out there who may or may not be a fit after all, or you
go get somebody from another team,
right?
Jason Kidd has a relationship with Jaylen Brunson, and obviously weird stuff going on in Dallas. Maybe I don't know this. Maybe he would like to try another opportunity. But yeah, it's not like this isn't the greatest coaching cycle in terms of proven names that find a good blend of newness, but also have had success. So they're either going to have to take a risk or double down and get another person that was somewhat similar to Tibbs.
And then you mentioned Giannis's name just moments ago, James. My last one for you is, could there be a roster shakeup of massive proportions at the same time of a coaching change? I mean, this is going to be in the ether over the next 2 weeks with the draft coming up. Every insider that I've had on is saying this is going to be a seismic offseason that could potentially start draft night. That's right around the corner. How do you do this hand in glove if Giannis does sort of raise his hand off camera and say, I want to go to the Knicks? I mean, or you can't do that because you're changing your coach, right? Like,
I think there's a lot going on, and you're 100% correct. I think the big thing when it comes to Giannis, I think he would have to come out and tell the Bucks, hey, I only want to go to New York, and if you don't trade me to New York, I'm not re-signing in 2 years. And Giannis does not strike me as a guy like that. The Knicks traded essentially the rest of their draft capital last summer to get Mikal Bridges, trading 5 first-round picks. They have a 2030 pick swap left that's really of great significance. If you're the Bucks and you're trading Giannis, are you not rebuilding? You have to imagine you're going to start fresh. You're not going to try to keep afloat. Maybe they do. That would surprise me. Like, is there ways to get it done? Yeah, you'd probably have to factor in another team or two, and it would be a big, long, drawn-out trade with a multiple and a multitude of names. That one still seems hard to me unless Giannis just straight up comes out and says, I'm only going to New York, and Milwaukee then obliges. But you look at somebody like Kevin Durant, like, is that possible? There's talks about other stars moving around in this league. So we'll see. I do think what you said, Rich, like the coach isn't the only issue here. I do think they have to consider some roster stuff. Whether big or small, I don't know. That's not my job, but they certainly, whatever they had, it didn't gel on the court always, and I don't think you can solely put that on the coach.
James, appreciate the time. Love to have you back on, but you wore the wrong hat. So
I won't do it again. I won't. I never knew if I'd come back on, so I had to rep my people.
I mean,
I
seriously,
appreciate
is that the only
James,
hat you have
did it right.
on?
You're good, James.
What?
No, James, you're fine.
Yeah, stay true
Don't let
to himself.
Rich bully you. Sparty, let's go.
No.
It's not the only hat I had. I actually dug through a bunch of hats to get to this one just for your show.
Oh, okay. So it's beyond purposeful. Hoskins, take the wide shot again. Take the wide shot again. Is that an actual diploma from Michigan State over your left?
It is.
Oh,
yeah,
those exist?
over my left shoulder.
Wow.
Touche.
So disrespectful.
Touche.
I was more focused on the shoe boxes.
Yeah,
okay.
Come on, man.
You know, Brockman and I are curious about that sneaker collection
Yeah,
back there. I'm trying to pick what you got.
I got a little bit over here. I try. Yeah, it's
Wow.
there's worse addictions, right? So
Agreed.
That's what I tell myself every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. James, great chatting with you. Thanks for the information. We appreciate it.
I really appreciate you guys. Thank you for having me.
That's James Edwards III.
That was
Right
great.
here in The Athletic. Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.